Welcome to the Board Edit. We want to help you to lead more boldly, serve wisely, and impact deeply.
Our goal is to equip 1 million community-minded leaders to serve with confidence. I'm your host, Craig.
And I'm your host, Dawn. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Board Edit.
Welcome back.
Yeah, what are we going to get into today?
We are going to talk about the 4 capitals. And I think a lot of people have heard of time, treasure, talent before, but this 4 capitals model really takes it to the next level. There are a lot of themes of fundraising in it, but it also aligns really well with board recruitment and understanding the why the organization has for recruiting you and making sure that it aligns with your personal why and where you can add the most value when you're investing that time to an organization.
I think this episode is really going to help people to maybe think about a nonprofit board service a little bit differently. Yeah. And of course, that's our whole reason for doing this, is to help people to serve by giving a little bit of a secret decoder ring. Because sometimes we think about board services, people who have to have really good sized checkbooks and be able to write checks to organizations, when actually it's a lot more than that.
It's so much more nuanced than that. Absolutely. Well, and fundraising doesn't just mean the dollar. It means connections with people, those social connections. It means the reputational capital of just the standing of that organization. It's that political money kind of piece of it that can mean fundraising too. So, this episode, I think, really combats some of the misconceived notions of just what it means to be part of the board in that respect. And yeah, excited to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've had to learn in my time in nonprofit world is that fundraising is really mission activation.
Yeah.
It is not a transaction. And I certainly didn't grow up in a family that knew philanthropy. And I think this piece really is a hurdle for board members to know how to lean in. We all come with our own money mindset. And, I grew up knowing money transactions was really in church. And, if my mother had $1 to give, it was $1 but I also saw other dollars and bigger dollars going in the same collection plate, And then of course, bake sales at Walmart. And we've all had those situations with cookie sales and those types of things. But really, when you're asking someone as part of a nonprofit board in this fundraising idea, is you're really helping someone to connect with a dollar, with larger sums of money, to something so much bigger than themselves. Yeah. But the money, as we're going to talk about today, is really not just the value of $1. It's also the value of what else that can bring and what you bring.
Right. And that's where kind of this model reframing fundraising to resources and that it's not just about the dollar, and the resources around 4 capitals is so important. So first is financial capital, which that's the easiest one. And that is the dollar, because at the end of the day, to do mission delivery, it takes mission activation, like we're talking about with fundraising. So the giving and getting of resources, but then these other capitals kind of expand on that, and it gets a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And I think the financial piece, a lot of time, and I get it. I've been there too. I was not comfortable with the size of the zeros behind some of the grants that I've had the opportunity to lead. And it's uncomfortable if you've never had that much money in your own checking account, right? And there is a pride in being able to look at those dollars and steward those dollars as you would if they were your own. But it really is much bigger than that. And really identifying up front with boards and sometimes with staff is that the discomfort that we have sometimes with money can really hold us back. And being able to get comfortable with the amount that it takes to do services versus, because like I'm not a person who is going to barter with you.
Yeah.
I am just not.
Yeah.
Other people have a real joy in that. Like they love that.
Yeah.
Right. They love a coupon.
Yep. Or the misconception that nonprofits have to get it for as big of a discount or as cheap as possible. And oh, it's so bad.
Right. And people always think that these like, why does it cost that much?
Yeah.
And they don't realize that sometimes the professional expertise to deliver the service is very cost involved.
Yeah.
And so kind of asking the questions, it's like, so what makes something cost as much as it does really helps you to get more comfortable with this idea of financial and giving and getting resources, because the mission is always tied when you're talking about money.
Right. Well, and it frames what it is the ask is driving, right? So if it's an ask for $1 or an ask for a relationship or an ask like, hey, can you come and get coffee with me so we can talk about this? Like there has to be some context behind what that ask is about. And when it's focused on the mission and the service delivery piece of it, it has a completely different weight than if it was just focused on, a naming opportunity or, something that might be very tangible, but isn't actually providing the service.
Yes. And it's never profit driven. It's not about being able to build those resources, even though as nonprofits, we're always judged on how much liquid net assets we have, which is money in the bank, if you're not familiar with that term. But it's money in the bank so that we can do ebb and flows with cash flow, which may or may not be that we're overspending. It just might be that some checks haven't come in for whatever reason.
The seasonality of it. Yeah.
Yep. The seasonality of it. And being able to just get really okay with saying, hey, could you go over what that means?
Right.
Is so helpful, because again, I think that most people come to nonprofits, charities, quote unquote, which is, charities is how we started. Yep. That's what it was named.
That's right.
And thinking about it's not just people that have these legacy names and communities are the only ones that can sit at boards.
Yeah.
It really isn't about that.
That's right.
And I think that's where these next ones really expand upon that.
Yep. So we talked about the financial capital. Let's talk about social capital and expanding networks and introductions. And this, I feel, is one of the easier asks of a board member when they're being asked to make an introduction and to start a relationship and not necessarily making an ask for money. Because, let's face it, like some people just have a very strong aversion to asking for money, asking for a sponsorship, whatever that ask looks like. But hey, could you text your friends and invite them to this event? Or hey, could you introduce me to your friend? I know that they supported something else. I'd love to, have a glass of wine with them. Like it's such an easier, lower barrier way of adding value that, a board member should understand that that's going to be asked of them.
Yeah. And I think this is where understanding as a board member, like if you are already a part of a civic organization and the board that you're joining hasn't ever presented, and you think that there's some people that you could introduce a topic to, being able to invite that CEO, not just to do a presentation, but create a seat at the table.
Right.
And I think that's one of my best phrases is, because we've all had to been asked to tables, right? We've all had to be asked, whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's having coffee or lunch, because again, we all travel the same circles usually. So if we're all inviting the CEO or staff into these individual circles that we have as boards, you've just expanded the connectedness of more people knowing about that organization than one person could ever do on their own.
Yeah. Well, and this is where I think the social capital can create inclusivity, right? It's connecting people, it's creating connections that people can benefit from, but it's just creating an environment where they're welcomed at the table too, not just invited. It's one thing to get an invite, but then to feel like a fish out of water, but to have a reason for being there and being part of the conversation.
Yeah. And I think honestly, here's a fun story is there's a staff person that I'm aware of that has grown up in a family that does rodeo, right? And I had no idea that there was a rodeo in the community in which I live in.
I did not know that either.
Yeah. And just through conversations and knowing that network, now that rodeo event now sponsors a nonprofit that I lead.
Yeah.
That wasn't anything that any board member did. It was another staff person, but it was interesting, like watching, it just kind of expanded people's ideas of where we could be as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a beautiful example that, and what has turned out is such a law of reciprocity moment, give and take, where the stories that board members and staff have come back from just manning that booth at a rodeo has given to a child serving organization.
Yeah.
Right. And that's an example of, just expanding based on your own social network, knowing, well, yeah, I know about rodeos. Yeah. I grew up in that family when most people didn't.
Right. And not just a reason to get some really fantastic cowboy boots, right?
Right. And a hat.
There you go.
And a hat. You just get to talk to a whole different sector of people.
Yeah. I love one piece about just being part of a nonprofit is just these various, very niche groups in the community that you find, from like a guild of quilters to this rodeo to just these very interconnected groups that have a really unique identity, and then connecting them with your mission and something that they want to get behind. Like there's such power to that organic connection too.
Yeah. And I will say one of the groups that, and it was all because in our community, which I have lived in, is a strong veteran community. A lot of them are connected to motorcycle communities or cars, antique show cars. Yep. Such a philanthropic group of people.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing how many board members were connected to that I didn't know were connected to that. But again, it just continues to expand the network. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah. And I think that's when we preface this episode about board recruitment, there's such a power of using this as an exercise to map out where the board members' four capitals lie, because you would never know if someone's doing a hoedown or, riding a Harley for a good cause. I mean, that's just might not come up in normal conversation. But when you take a moment to really kind of create these circles of like, who do I know? How do I know these people? Where are these groups at? What connections I have? I mean, it really can open up natural and organic doors that you're not having to cold call or, randomly find new supporters. It's just this very organic connection.
Yes. And allowing time at board meetings to, one of my favorite sayings that I'm pretty sure I coined, so maybe I should trademark it. I don't know, but it's to look up and out. Don't go in and spend. So when you feel like your nonprofit is under-resourced or is lacking something, or you're coming into a challenging time, again, look up and look out. Yeah. Look to your board members. As a board member, be open to the conversations that are challenging and think about, okay, well, who do I know that could help?
Right.
Who do I know that could help?
Right.
Because I'm always the person to think I am not the first person who's been here. Somebody has solved this. Yeah. Let's help.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. But then we flip to kind of a different sort of capital that we need on the board, because there are some roles that and some of the areas that we serve that we really do need some professional expertise.
Yeah. Well, and we also, on a previous episode, have talked about board types. And there are organizations that are very much driven by fundraising, but then there's boards that are very driven as experts and this intellectual capital that people are recruited for, and being able to share expertise, share a strategic insight, because they don't need the public dollar, they're funded elsewhere. But that expertise is critical of being either a thought leader or providing, a very serious service that, that requires people with this background to have.
Yeah. And I think, so we've talked, also on other episodes about the need for data.
Yeah.
There are some people who geek out on data. Right?
I am not one of them.
I might be, but the creating of the charts and the tech stuff, I need your help to do, right? The dashboards. But again, like when we need data-driven people.
Right.
We need people within a field of expertise that know, oh, well, I've had experience on this dashboard. Oh, let me connect you with somebody who knows that. There are in wealth advisement, right? In terms of knowing what to do with money and how to maybe simplify it for it. There really is sort of this expertise and strategic insight. That's why it is important, I think, again, to your point, map your board. Do you have people from, if you're dealing with an organization that serves unhoused, homeless people, or children, or those that have experienced some type of trauma in their life, whether it's addiction, trafficking, all of those things that sadly we see in today's headlines, there has to be a professional expertise like law enforcement. We also have to have people that can connect to resources medically, and making sure that your board is partnering with people who are about solving the problem, not just creating the services that serve it.
Right.
And that might take a little bit of, time in a meeting, or maybe setting aside a 4-hour, like, hey, who would like to help me map this out?
Yeah.
Who's not at our table that we need?
Right.
But it can really prove to be helpful because you're not only helping to solve a problem strategically, but you may also be connecting to financial resources that you had no idea exist.
Yeah. Well, and doing those exercises also allow you to see what gaps exist and being able to fill those in, so that, when we reference this back to the Surf Smart framework and the R of represent, you need to have that board that is a reflection of either the issue or the expertise that they hold, so that those people at the table can appropriately advocate for it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this next one is a little bit connected, because I think a lot of times this reputational capital does many times, at least in my world, it is sort of related to your profession.
Yeah.
And whether or not you're an expert. But I think, we talk about being able to have people at the table who can actually help you solve something. I think when you can bring leaders to the table community wise that have solved some things, and people have trust, and they see people as credible because they have leapt into situations and communities that other people wouldn't.
Correct.
Because they realize it's a long-term deal, it's expensive, all of those things. But if your organization is a part of that missional drive for your community, you need people that are seen and have that reputation as leaders.
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the most nuanced of the capitals, because it's the least tangible, of just, how do you measure that, or how do you determine one's credibility and compare it to another board member or something. But it doesn't make it any less important, especially as organizations get to that level of advocacy work, where you're not just doing the day-to-day, but you're trying to affect the policy landscape around your mission delivery. I mean, you have to have those thought leaders, those experts, those credible people around you, whether it's on the board or an advisory committee, just to have impact at that policy level.
Yeah, or you have to be able to hire a consultant for the board that can lend itself, whether that's a lobbyist or someone who can come in and help identify maybe a sector that you hadn't thought about that needed to be at the table.
Yep. And then listen to the consultant and the expertise that they bring, and not have some of those biases of the information you thought you knew versus what data and evidence the consultant is bringing to the table, because that's where boards can take a misstep too.
Yeah, because I think this goes along with this topic, and I heard it. People say that we're not comfortable, right? There's something about a comfort zone, but many times our ability to solve something is about our own esteem.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to fail.
Right.
And a lot of these big world issues that nonprofits are organized around, there's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. But the stakes are high, right? I
And the
mean,
stakes are
people's
high.
lives are sometimes
Yeah.
dependent on it.
Yeah. And so having that, oh, we haven't used gut check.
Oh, we haven't on this one.
Yes.
Are you going to use it right now?
Yes, I'm going to use it.
Perfect. Perfect
Yes.
time.
We have to do a gut check of why we're at the table,
Yeah.
because it's tough going.
Right.
And to stay in the game long enough. But that was a really kind of mind pondering phrase to say that it's not because I'm uncomfortable. It's, do I actually feel like I have what is needed to potentially solve this?
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where I think 4 Capitals helps to reframe the concept of fundraising, which is the commonly known word. I mean, people naturally equate nonprofits and fundraising. But when we take it and elevate that to this idea of creating culture around philanthropy and advancement, the lens changes, right? Because it focuses more on the outcome of that dollar rather than just the dollar. And that's where organizations, I feel, can get so caught up in the event or the annual appeal and like the outputs of fundraising that they forget about what it's really impacting and the outcome of it.
And I have seen people, when this is not handled well, when you don't know, you haven't identified your board members by what capital they actually bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And you have a fundraising chair or even staff sometimes, and you're holding everybody to a certain financial commitment.
Right.
You have people quit.
Yeah, absolutely.
They quit.
Yeah.
Because they didn't come on with that expectation. And so I think having sort of that mapping out of the board so that everyone feels clear and everyone, no matter the dollar given, is able to leverage what they bring, whether it is their social connections, their intellectual capital, or their reputational capital, as we outline in the book. But I think really paying attention to that.
Yeah.
Because people will quit. They'll silently quit on you before they quit, but they'll quit.
They will. Well, and like some of our other topics, I think this approach can create equity where people are coming to the table with what they have. And that's not in comparison or better than or less than other people around the table, but they're all being recognized for what they can contribute. And it's not just the dollar amount.
Mm-hmm. And I think even having brainstorming when people, because I think we forget what we know sometimes, all of us do. And so having those moments in board meetings to say, hey, this is what we're trying to solve. And then just having sort of some brainstorming where you're just starting to kind of map for yourself, like, who is it I know? Because you might not have seen them for a year and you forgot that you have a resource that could be helpful in this, especially from an intellectual standpoint or even social. Like, you may not realize that people that you see because you teach Sunday school is actually social capital. Yeah. Those are connections that I might not have because I don't attend that church. I attend another, or I sit down. We all know these restaurants and communities where people gather on Wednesday mornings at this time. And if you want to see certain people, that's where you go, right? Yep. So sometimes people forget that they have that already built in for themselves, and that would actually be helpful for the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it just takes that conversation to begin creating that culture of activation. I love that frame around not just asking, but activating, because people want to feel that their contributions are valuable and that they can feel a level of success when the organization accomplishes something with their contributions.
Yes, because again, if we look at every board member as the first donor, as the first volunteer, those are the ones that we want to really build on because they're our biggest ambassador. You know, we want those that go out and share, oh my gosh, I just had the best meeting. Yeah. And I learned this, or oh my gosh, even if it's going home and telling your family that, right? You just created more ambassadors for the organization.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. So at your next board meeting, take a pause and do a mapping exercise. I actually just did this with my board at our last month's meeting. And it was so eye-opening when you have a board member whose husband's roommate from college played this sport and they are now donating an auction item. And it just these random one-off nuances that if you ask the person, oh, who do you know? I mean, they might not think of that immediately, but when you frame it in this 4 capitals model, or we have a resource on our website, a board recruitment matrix, where you can identify those different areas that you're looking at or what gaps exist. It really can elevate the conversation and start moving from fundraising to philanthropy.
Yeah. And this conversation really is, I think, why we've named this podcast The Board Edit, because it's not like throw it all out.
Right.
It's right. How do we build on what we have?
Right.
And that's really editing.
Yeah.
So we hope you've enjoyed this. We'd love to hear what stuck out to you as you've listened to this.
Yeah.
And we hope you'll join us next time on The Board Edit.
Thanks for joining us.
Curious how your board measures up? Take our free Serve Smart board assessment at theconfidentcompanyus.com.